Welcome back. In this, our fourth lesson, we'll be talking about texture and framing within a frame. First, let's not lose sight of our focus. We are studying photography, and more specifically, how we can capture images or paint with light in such a way that brings impact and interest to the viewer. And so, to answer this question, we've been looking at elements of design, such as the use of line and shape, form, and for today, we'll look at how we can use the element of texture. Much like the other elements of design, texture can be used to bring about certain emotions from the viewer. For example, I captured my wife with this different expression, and I thought I could highlight the feeling of this picture by adding some kind of texture that would bring about this ferocity and anger that she was trying to depict. And so, an overlay of texture was just what I needed. It complemented her feelings that she was showing here and adds to the overall image feeling to the viewer. So, whether it's an emotion of calmness that we feel when we look at soft and gentle things, or feelings of courage and strength and power by looking at things that are solid, or the tranquil feelings we get when we see things that are fluid in nature, or the feelings of time passed by, aging, tiredness, when we look at things that are weathered and worn. Texture is a tool, something an artist can use to evoke emotions from the viewer. So then the question is, how do we use texture to bring interest to our images? There are really only two options for using texture. One is to bring about a texture that is similar to the texture of the subject in order to enhance it. For example, this baby would be seen as soft and gentle. So often, artists will surround babies with soft and gentle textures in order to bring about this soft and gentle feeling. The other is to use textures that contrast each other or contrast the feelings wanting to be evoked. For instance, here's a tranquil picture of a beach and an ocean, but notice the craggly textures of the puzzle pieces and the cobwebs make for an interesting clash of feelings. One reason the clothespin here pops out so much is because its texture is seen clearly, whereas the background itself is soft and blurred. Those different textures work together to highlight the subject. Oftentimes, photographers will use this contrast to their advantage when photographing people. For instance, if you put a couple up against a textured, weathered wall, the couple will pop out because they contrast so differently with that texture. So my daughter here, aside from the color difference, pops out from the background because the background is this strange texture of hay, where my daughter is a completely different texture. Practice this technique by taking your subject and putting it up against a textured background, getting that contrast. Or, if your subject itself is very textured, use contrast to your advantage by placing your textured subject up against a background that is clear and clean. Also, be mindful that light plays a huge role in texture. Side light will enhance the texture, whereas light that comes straight onto the subject will not bring about that texture that you might want the viewer to see. Notice here how the texture on this building would be much less pronounced. It wouldn't pop out as much if the light was coming from behind the photographer.